Hey, girlfriend, you know who you are. You have big, big dreams. You want to write a book, stand on a TED Talk stage, be a life coach offering wisdom from your RV in Montana, a cafe in Barcelona, or a beach chair in Tulum. Your other girlfriends and your family, they don't always get your biz savvy. Why do you want to leave your JOB? Because you're a C.A.T.S, aka coach, author, thought leader, and speaker. Meet other change makers like yourself and find out how they make it happen. This is the Big Meow podcast.
Hello, cats. I'm Kristen White, and I'm here with Keren Eldad. Hey, Keren, how's it going?
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Awesome. So I'm so glad you're here today. So your business is about with enthusiasm. And tell me all about what that means.
First, I want to tell you how much I love the cat ears. I am a huge cat person, the cat lady to end all cat ladies.
And I don't know, I have 6 cats, so.
That's the dream. If my husband weren't such a pain, I would have 6. I only have 2, the great Moose and Waffles. C.A.T.S, coach, authors, thought leaders, and speakers is a really wonderful acronym. And that's a great description of what I do. With Enthusiasm Coaching is an executive coaching business, but I'm also a thought leader and speaker and coming soon, author. And it started 6 years ago after my entire life collapsed in an enormous, delightful fire. For most coaches, that is, there is an origin story, right? Which is essentially my life fell apart. I finally found self-help. I started to discover who I really am. And when I turned that around into the success story that it is, I found it with enthusiasm to teach everybody else how to do the same thing.
You know, I think that is such a true element to anyone who is out there. You know, when you're writing a book, or even if you're going to give that TED talk, you know, you have to have that moment. I call it the full life meltdown, right?
Yeah.
So when everything is all shattered around you and you have to look at these pieces and say, well, what really actually matters to me? And how much was I holding that was actually attached to others and not really myself?
Absolutely. And that's also the story of courage and resurrection, which is why I call it, and ironically, I am Jewish, the come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
Now, let me
That's
show
so
you what
funny.
I'm made of moment. And those of us who have been through the dark night of the soul and have really used that to catapult ourselves into a future of I can and I will, are here to tell the tale. And that's where the cat comes out.
Absolutely. So talk a little bit about, you know, resolving your personal history. I love that. When I was reading your information before you came on, how do we resolve our personal history?
You stop being ashamed of it and you talk about it openly with someone who is empathetic enough to not only listen, but to hold the space for you, to draw conclusions from it that are completely antithetical to the way you saw it before. That's where resolution comes from. Many of us just carry our personal history like a big old sack. I've heard so many people talk about generational trauma. You can put the sack down, you know, at some point. You can make a decision to stop that. You can. This isn't genetics. And by the way, even with genetics, my parents are both diabetics, for example. I have decided in my lifetime to do whatever I can to not have to carry that through. You can. There are many measures one can take to overwrite genetics, but you can also overwrite generational trauma. And it's exactly the same with personal history. There is nothing you have done in most cases that is so horrible that you cannot change the course of your life. And once you decide to speak it, to be honest about it, to face it, you will be able to also claim your future. That's the crux, I think, of what we do in life coaching.
Absolutely. So what is your business philosophy?
My business philosophy is grow up and choose yourself. You know, Kristen, my personal business was born out of 2 things. The first was dire straits, and the second was being sick of being in dire straits and starting to recognize through that the American dream is dead. And I am a naturalized citizen, so the biggest fan of America in the world. And at the same time, I learned when I was unemployed and broke and divorced and going through a whole bunch of other personal things that this is not the kind of country or system that will take care of you. not for one single second. If something really hard happens, most of us are on our own, which means that this ideal, the picket fence and the middle class guaranteed, and the if you went to college, you'll have a great job, that was true for like 1956. That was certainly not true for anyone who has existed in the last 20 years. So I really only had one choice, which is to choose myself and to go all in on myself and to really recognize that those are the guarantees. And that's where grow up came from. It's put on your big girl pants and decide to do whatever it takes to make sure that your dreams become a reality. By whatever it takes, I don't mean anything illegal or unethical, of course, but I do mean summon all of your strength and all of your capability to close the learning gaps, to get the skills, to acquire the talent, and to get yourself to that next level.
You know, that story just so resonates with me. I remember back in, say, 2009, I also had that full life meltdown. I went through a divorce. I had 3 kids under the age of 5. And, you know, I used to work in TV news and I wasn't going back to do that. Right. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? All I had was a self-published book, Mystic in a Minivan. I was like, okay, I have to crack the code on this. And I think that one of the things that is so important for all of us who are in this transformational business is to keep moving towards what you're passionate about, even if in the early phases, there's not a lot of evidence that you're getting any traction.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Like you have to just keep moving forward. And then I think that's when opportunity meets the momentum that you've already created.
Absolutely. You have to recognize that every step is a step and you have to double down on the dream. And Kristen and I had huge advantages because we didn't have anything to fall back on. And
Right.
that's actually something that I tell everybody. Pray for a shitstorm because it will force you to be in a space where you have to make this work. This is such an important point because many of my clients are actually very, very well funded, have exited a company, are in a very financially solvent situation. And that's a disadvantage. It's too comfortable. We want to shake that out of you. I keep telling them, I want you to pretend your daughter's life is at risk. I want you to move like you mean it. I want you to be like Keren when she had $37 and was not going to go live on a friend's sofa again.
I love it. Keren, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
You are listening to the Big Meow podcast, sponsored by C.A.T.S Network.
I want to pick back up on something that you were talking about before the break and how important it is to really go for it. I mean, I do think that a lot of us in some ways could be suffering in comfort. Like it's just comfortable enough that we're like, I really love to change what I'm doing. I want to leave my job. I want to go out and be a coach or write a book or do something that really embraces my wisdom and my intuition and my passions, but we just don't follow through with the steps that are needed to get there. What would you say to those people?
I would say that comfort is the enemy. And you have to get clear on the fact that you're lying to yourself if you think it actually is comfort, because you probably know that the nagging in your head is not only going to not stop, it's going to get louder, which means you're actually very uncomfortable. And it's very important for us to become honest with ourselves about how uncomfortable we are. This isn't good enough. If you're constantly yearning for the life that could be and you're stopping yourself, you are actually probably in a lot of pain. And that is the pain of lack of self-actualization, of missing your potential. The only way to close that gap is to go all in on yourself. And the only way to that is to become aware enough to tell the truth that you're actually very uncomfortable. It's a good thing.
Absolutely. Oh my God. So if you could break it down into a couple steps, let's say someone's sitting here thinking, gosh, I want to move forward, but I don't even know where to start.
Great. Number one, you're already there. Just tell the truth. I'm not comfortable. This isn't good enough for me. Say it out loud. This is not good enough for me. Number two, this is going to be even harder. Ask for help. None of us crosses this chasm alone. The first thing that happened to me that completely changed my life was when I not only took that moment to say, actually, I'm not as highfalutin as I think I am. And number two, I called a coach, and it was Jen Sincero, and said, I don't got this. And here's the crux. Can you help me? Can you help me? Number three, act on it. make a decision to make any step in the direction of breaking your wall of comfort and stepping into discomfort. This might just be reading a self-help book on a plane where everybody can see you. This might just be hiring your coach. This might be establishing your first LLC for $850 or whatever it costs to open an LLC. Right. Any step is a step, and you'll see you're going to like it so much, it'll become addictive, and you'll take the next step and the next step and the next step. But that's the 3-step process that I would recommend.
So what was some challenge that's come up for you recently? I mean, you're a total badass. Like I can feel your vibe totally, but what's something that came up for you that you're like, gosh, I'm not quite sure I'm going to navigate around this. And then what did you do?
I love that question. And it's because of the fallacy of if you're highfalutin, you're always highfalutin and everything is good in your life. But that's just not how life works. Life doesn't get better, you get better. And the ability to know within yourself who you are allows you to overcome the challenges that will constantly come our way. The most recent challenge that I love talking about is a new challenge, and that's the challenge of growing up in your business. Believe it or not, stage 1 and it is not the only end game, as in getting the plane off the ground. Reaching cruising altitude is just as painful, and starting to ascend even higher, awful, right. Absolutely horrible. That's why they call it growing pains, not growing deliciousness. Right. And as my business started to really take off last year, I mean, really fast velocity of sales, which I had never experienced before. It was a steady growing business through referrals that I could sustain. This was more than I could sustain. It was fast and it was furious. I had to reckon with something that I hadn't dealt with in the past, which was a complete lack of enthusiasm for my own business. I was exhausted, I hated it, and I wanted to shut down the shop.
How ironic that is, because your business is with the enthusiasm method.
And it's literally, I'm like, I don't want to show up. And everything was annoying me. And I just couldn't find the wherewithal to do this and to do all the hiring that needed to be done and to run the launches. And that was a great sign to take my own advice. Number 1, I am at a new stage. I have to recognize that this is not good enough. It's time to grow. Number 2, get help. You don't know what the next stage is. Hire somebody who does. Immediately hire a coach. And number 3, take any next step in that direction. And for me, that was first and foremost to take a break and to really start to support myself, to find the support that I needed to get to the next level comfortably rather than like a screaming child.
I love it. I love it. So what's next for you, Keren?
What's next for me is hopefully the book, The Superstar Paradox, which will see light in 2024, and the beginning of ascension into thought leadership, which is more speaking and creating and writing rather than the CEO exhaustion of running a business. And that takes time. That's a scaling arc that takes time, but at least you know now that I'm equipped to deal with it and I have everything in place. It's just going to take time and getting used to it.
You're totally well on your way. There's no doubt in my mind. So how can we find you?
On coachkeren.com or kereneldad.com. One of them is the program, one of them is the website, and at Coach Keren on Instagram, and Keren with 2 E's, not like Keren with an E.
Awesome. Keren, thanks so much for being with me today on the Big Meow.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure, and meow to you.
Thanks for listening to the Big Meow podcast, sponsored by C.A.T.S Network. If you liked what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. You can also join our network filled with positivity and possibility. Visit www.catsnetworking.com to join us and learn more, together with your magical, motivated, and mystical new friends at C.A.T.S Network. Let's transform 1 million lives with your message. Are you feeling isolated, sitting at home in your PJs? Or perhaps you're tired of the comfy sweatpants with holes in them that are hidden just below the camera? I mean, you could puke at the thought of another day of Zoom meetings and reporting to your BOSS. Do you want freedom from your home office desk or the office cubicle? Do you want freedom from your current career? Or are you frustrated that your online biz dreams are going nowhere? It's all too overwhelming. Where do you start? All the tech, the choices, and your message. Yep, I said your message, your brand, your voice. What is it? Do you even know what that means? Do you need a biz coach but don't want to invest the big bucks? Let's face it, being a solopreneur is lonely, but you don't have to do it alone. And here's a solution. Join C.A.T.S Network. C.A.T.S Network is a woman-only membership community exclusively available to you, the life coach or executive coach, the author, the thought leader, or the public speaker. If you identify with this list or want to work on adding some of these to your skill set, C.A.T.S is the place for you. Check us out at www.catsnetworking.com. That's C.A.T.S networking.com. Because let's face it, cats are better together.